Ever since the lead up to the 2016 election, Donald Trump has regularly been compared to Adolf Hitler. These comparisons have been subject to significant criticism, particularly in the aftermath of the recent assassination attempt. Some people argue that these comparisons incite violence. Some people argue that these comparisons are ridiculous. Some people hate it when Trump is compared to Hitler. But what do I make of these comparisons? Can Donald Trump reasonably be compared to Adolf Hitler? Or is this a ridiculous comparison? It is my view that comparing Trump to Hitler is often reasonable. This is not to say that every comparison is defensible. This is simply to say that some of them certainly are. Trump has many strong similarities to Adolf Hitler. Obviously, Trump is not as bad as Hitler, at least not yet. But the similarities are numerous, and they should be pointed out. Hitler was, of course, a dictator. Trump is an aspiring dictator. This is not hyperbole, this is just a fact. In 2020, Trump attempted to overthrow American democracy. He pushed a fake electors scheme. He tried to pressure Pence into refusing to certify the election result. He incited a mob of violent supporters to storm the Capitol building. He called a governor and demanded that they find votes for him. He shamelessly attempted to overthrow democracy. He shamelessly attempted to stay in power in spite of being voted out. Trump is an aspiring dictator. Hitler was a dictator, and before he was a dictator, he was himself an aspiring dictator. The dictatorial nature of Trump and Hitler is a major similarity, and a politically significant similarity. This similarity should be pointed out. Both Trump and Hitler were subject to an intense cult of personality. Both leaders had mindlessly loyal and unquestioningly obedient followers. Both leaders had large numbers of followers who were totally obsessed with them and blindly loyal to them. Trump supporters will not abandon him over anything. They are obsessed with him. He has committed increasingly reprehensible actions, and still they are loyal to him. Some of them openly say that he could do nothing that would make them abandon their loyalty. Some say that they trust him more than they trust their own friends and family. Both Trump and Hitler have been subject to an intense cult of personality. This is a similarity that should be pointed out. Hitler was notorious for dehumanizing his political opponents and the various marginalized groups that he demonized. Trump has called his political opponents vermin. Trump has accused immigrants of poisoning the blood of the nation. This brutal dehumanization is totally indistinguishable from something that Hitler would say. Like Hitler, Trump's rhetoric has often been characterized by intense dehumanization. The use of extremely dehumanizing rhetoric is a similarity between Trump and Hitler, and a similarity that should be pointed out. When you refer to your political opponents as vermin and accuse minorities of poisoning the blood of the nation, comparisons to Hitler are inevitable. You do not get to cry about it. You brought these comparisons on yourself. Your disgusting, dehumanizing rhetoric made them inevitable. Hitler was a notoriously illiberal leader. He was completely opposed to individual rights and freedoms. Trump has exhibited similar tendencies. He has suggested that the Constitution should be terminated. He wants to deport pro-Palestine protesters. This would destroy freedom of speech and freedom to protest. Trump has exhibited extremely illiberal tendencies and a disdain for individual rights and freedoms. This is a similarity to Hitler that should be pointed out. Hitler was notorious for scapegoating, directing society's anger towards vulnerable minorities, blaming marginalized people for society's problems. Hitler did it with the Jews. Today we see Trump doing the same thing with transgender people and immigrants. It is dangerous, and it is a major similarity that should be pointed out. Trump and Hitler have many similarities. They both detest democracy and desire dictatorship. They are both subject to an intense cult of personality. They both employ highly dehumanizing rhetoric aimed at marginalized people and political opponents. They are both highly illiberal, with disdain for personal rights and freedoms. They both rely on scapegoating marginalized people. Hitler is worse than Trump, but the many similarities should be pointed out. They serve as a warning. They remind us just how dangerous this form of politics can be. Many on the political right will complain about comparisons between Trump and Hitler. The simple reality is that they have many similarities, and these similarities should be pointed out. We must learn from the horrors of the past, otherwise we will repeat them. If you don't like being compared to Hitler, there is a very easy way to stop people from comparing you to Hitler. Stop acting like Hitler. If you don't want to be compared to Hitler, just stop acting like Hitler. We must learn from the horrors of the past. We must learn from the horrors of the Nazi regime. That means opposing the presidential candidate who shares many of its characteristics. Donald Trump is a highly illiberal political candidate, and I mean that in the worst sense of the word. He despises freedom, democracy, equality, reason, progress. He hates the most basic values of liberalism as an Enlightenment ideology. He is the enemy of the good governance that America deserves. He represents a political rot. He must be defeated in the approaching election. His dangerous illiberal politics must be defeated.